Hello everyone. Welcome back to the channel. Thank you for tuning in. It's your girl Beloved and I'm back with a new recipe for the channel. Beloved Catering Service is a business where we make cakes, meat pies, ring donuts, samosa, spring rolls, and all kinds of fruit drinks and fruit juices, especially sobolo. We also make jollof rice and fried rice for all events and occasions. You can contact us with the information provided on your screen. Guys, as we all know, this is a very festive season, and also this month stands for the most precious month in my life because it's your girl's birthday this month and there's a whole lot to be celebrated. Since this month is my birthday month and also Christmas, I would like to call this month December to remember. Oh yes, it's indeed December to remember. And with that being said, I want to seize this opportunity to wish each and every December born here a very happy birthday. Not forgetting myself as well. And I would also like to wish each and everyone a Merry Christmas and a prosperous New Year. We hope that next year brings us so much good and so much happiness and also strong faith in God. In today's video, we are going to be making my graduation cake. This is our first attempt at trying a fondant cake making. Ingredients for this recipe include 2 tablespoons of instant coffee powder, 3/4 cup of cocoa powder, 250 grams of white granulated sugar, 1/2 cup of buttermilk, red gel food color, 2 tablespoons of vanilla essence, 4 tablespoons of cornstarch, 1/2 tablespoon of baking powder, 1/4 tablespoon of salt, 1/2 tablespoon of baking powder, 4 tablespoons of condensed milk, 6 egg yolks and 6 egg whites, 3/2 cups of all-purpose flour, 1/2 cup of butter, 1/2 cup of vegetable oil, and then for the covering of the cake, we are going to be using 2 packs of fondant, 1/4 pack of icing sugar, black food color, blue food color, leftover buttercream from making my birthday cake, golden sprinkles, and then the fondant tools. Today we are going to be using 2 8-inch square baking tins. To get it ready, I greased it with my homemade cake release and then placed them aside. Into the mixing bowl containing the butter, I added in the sugar and then proceeded to use the hand mixer to combine the two into a light and fluffy mixture. Then I went ahead to add in the egg yolks, mix them together as the egg yolks were being added into the mixture. Now I added in the condensed milk and then the vanilla essence and gave everything a good mix. And then our wet ingredients are ready. Onto the wet ingredients, I placed on the sieve, poured into it 4 tablespoons of powdered milk, the flour, the baking soda, the baking powder, the salt, and then the cornstarch. Now I gave everything a shake onto the wet ingredients, gave it a good mix with the aid of a spatula, and then continued to add into it the buttermilk. After mixing them, I added onto it the rest of the dry ingredients, gave it a little mix, and then finally the rest of the buttermilk. Now I mixed everything together and then it was ready, so I set that aside. Into another mixing bowl, I added in the egg whites, whisked it with the aid of the hand mixer, and then added in sugar as it was mixing gradually. Now I added into the mixture we already have the egg white mix and then mixed it with the rest of the butter and then set it aside. After the mixing was done, I proceeded to divide it into 3 equal quantities. Into one of the mixing bowls, I added in the cocoa powder, 40 grams of vegetable oil, and then gave it a good mix. With the other butter, I added in a tablespoon of the cocoa powder and a portion of the red food color, gave it a good mix, and this is the red color that we obtained. Let's make the marbling effect. Scoop the vanilla butter into the cake tins, add onto it the red velvet and then the chocolate. Do so until each cake tin has these 3 butters mixed up beautifully. After all the butter has been scooped into the cake tins, use a skewer to create these circular beautiful designs in the cake batter and then pop it into the oven for 20 minutes or until a skewer comes out clean. Let's move on to covering the cake with the fondant. This is our setup for today's activity. Begin by removing the fondant from the container and the rubber it's covered in. And then try and use your hands to knead it as you've taken it out of the container. It still has the container's shape. After rolling out the fondant, roll the fondant around the pin and then place it aside on the mat. After all the folding and kneading is done, use the fondant rolling pin to roll out the fondant into an inch thick. After that, spread some of the icing sugar onto the fondant mat and then continue the rolling out to prevent the fondant from sticking to the mat. Now, remove the cakes from the fridge and then unravel it from the cling film that was used to cover it, and then place it onto a cake board. With the aid of a serrated knife, cut the cake according to the size that you want to cover with the fondant. Trim off all the caramelized edges and then the top of the cake as well. Do the same for the second cake. With the aid of a long ruler, take the measurements of the cake on the cake board, both the length and the width, and then use that measurement to measure the length that you want to cut out of the fondant. After marking out the measurements that you want, use the pie cutter to cut it out and then set it aside. Now use your hand to break some of the cake pieces into particles and mix it with the frosting. And use the offset spatula to apply some of the frosting onto the cake. After covering it with the frosting, place onto it the fondant size that you cut earlier and then flip it onto another board. Now use the serrated knife to cut the top part of that side as well and then drizzle it with any syrup of your choice. Now cover this part with frosting as well. Roll out the second piece of the fondant that was set aside earlier. Use the ruler to demarcate the size that you want and then cut it with the pie cutter. Now cover the sides and the top of the cake with the aid of the frosting that was used earlier. Use the fondant smoother to smooth out the part that was covered with the fondant. Cover the other sides with the fondant and then cut it if it's excess. Ensure that all the sides and top parts of the frosting covered cake are covered with the fondant and then set it aside. Onto the next batch of the fondant, add the royal blue food color. To prevent the blue color from sticking to my hand, I smeared my hand with vegetable shortening or white fat, and then went on to mix the fondant and the color by kneading, folding and tossing until I arrive at the blue color that I needed. To get it as deep as this, add a little bit of black food color and then knead them together. After that, use the rolling pin to roll it out and then demarcate it with the ruler according to the length and width that you want. After that, cover the second cake with the frosting. Ensure that the top and sides are covered evenly. Now place onto the frosting covered cake the fondant. Smoothen it out with the fondant smoothers, and then use the pizza cutter to cut the excess off. After that, flip it onto another board. Use a scissors to cut off any excess. Roll out the other part and then use the same process to cover that side as well. Trim off any excess and then give the edges of the cake a bit of a lift. After that, pick up some of the white frosting and use a scissors to create kind of a bookmarking for the book cake that you are making. Now use this pattern maker to create this beautiful pattern on the top part of the cake. After that, cut some already cleaned and dried bamboo sticks, which will serve as a support for the top cake that will be placed onto this one. Lift the first cake with the aid of the cake board that it is on and place it onto the one on the black board. After that, create a bookmarking for that one as well, and then use the pattern maker to create the same pattern on the top. To make it more visible, I use the ruler to mark up those lines that were created earlier. It's time to add onto it the round sprinkles. To aid the sprinkles stick to the cake, I painted the corners with water and then placed the sprinkles accordingly. Since we'll be writing congratulations and then class of 2023 on my graduation cake, I rolled out some of the white fondant and then used this alphabet and number cutters to cut the alphabet and numbers accordingly, and then I arranged it on a cake board and then placed them aside. To give the alphabets and numbers an elevated and visible look, I painted it with gold dust on the cake board until each one was covered beautifully. To give the top cake a more visible and beautiful look, I decided to paint the inner part with some gold dust. And then out of some of the white frosting, I used the round cutter to create this round pattern and then use the fondant tool to write the name of my school on the outer edge of the round pattern. In order for what I wrote with the fondant pencil to stand out, I painted that part with some of the gold dust and then placed it aside. To aid the round pattern I made earlier stick on the cake, I painted the part that I wanted to place this on with some water, used another round cookie cutter to cut some of the blue frosting and then placed it on first, applied some of the water onto that and then placed the white round pattern on it. I rolled out the blue fondant and then used the alphabet cutter to create these 3 alphabets. Then I used some of the water on the pattern I created earlier and then placed the alphabets on it accordingly. Now with the aid of the pizza cutter, I lifted the round pattern from the workspace onto the blue pattern I created earlier, and then I used some of the gold dust to create the pattern in the middle part. Then I painted
the bottom part of the cake board with water and started arranging the congratulations. And then I did same for the class of 2023. After all that was done, I used A4 sheet and some thread to create the graduation cap beside the cake on the cake board. To add a finishing touch to the cake, I used this cute little machine that produces a bit of vapor, which is used in fondant cake making, and then gave the cake a thorough spray. And guys, we are done with my graduation cake making. As I stated earlier in the beginning of the video, this is our first attempt at using fondant, and I had a very good experience with this. As I always say, believe in yourself whenever you want to do something, and I promise you are going to get it done beautifully.
With that being said, we have come to the end of today's video. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to the channel if you are new here. Guys, subscribing to the channel is a way to promote my content to so many people, and this will also help us get equipment that we need to promote this business as well. So I'll be very grateful if you could subscribe right now if you are new here. Kindly join the beloved Gators family, and I promise you wouldn't regret it. Until we meet again, everyone,